Have you ever wondered what life is like for people living in the poorest countries in the world? Today, we're going to take a closer look at the 10 poorest countries in 2024 and explore the challenges and struggles faced by their citizens. Number 1. Burundi. Burundi is the poorest country in the world in 2024, with a GDP per capita of just $267. A shocking 87% of the population lives on less than $1.90 a day, and most people rely on subsistence agriculture to survive. Poverty in Burundi is made worse by a long history of civil wars, corruption, poor access to education and healthcare, and weak infrastructure. The country is also densely populated, with over 1,200 people per square mile, putting immense pressure on the land and resources. HIV/AIDS is another major issue, with poor healthcare contributing to the spread of the disease. Burundi's main exports are cobalt, copper, sugar, and coffee, but much of the wealth from these resources ends up in the hands of corrupt officials and multinational corporations. Number 2. South Sudan. Coming in at number 2, South Sudan has a GDP per capita of just $234.07. The quality of life here is extremely low, with poverty affecting a staggering 66% of the population. One of the main challenges facing South Sudan is its landlocked location, which makes it difficult for aid organizations and investors to access the country. Poor road conditions, especially during the rainy seasons, further isolate many areas. Widespread corruption is another major issue, with those in power using the country's wealth for personal gain instead of helping the people. Access to healthcare is limited, with 105 infants dying for every 1,000 births due to a lack of immunization programs. Illiteracy rates are high, with a significant gender gap. 40% of men and 16% of women are illiterate. Additionally, only 62% of the population has access to clean drinking water, and 80% lack access to proper sanitation facilities. Number 3. Central African Republic. The Central African Republic has a GDP per capita of just $120.05, making it the third poorest country in the world in 2024. A staggering 71% of the population lives below the international poverty line, and over 40% suffer from chronic malnutrition. Conflict and violence have plagued the country, with over 600,000 people seeking refuge outside its borders. Political instability, ethnic tensions, and religious rivalries have all contributed to the unrest. Healthcare is a major concern, with 882 deaths occurring for every 100,000 live births due to pregnancy-related issues. HIV/AIDS, malaria, lower respiratory infections, diarrheal diseases, and tuberculosis are also leading causes of death. Number 4. Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, is the fourth poorest country in the world in 2024, with a GDP per capita of just $128.08. Despite being rich in natural resources like copper, cobalt, and arable land, 73% of the population lives on less than $1.90 a day. Political instability and a history of war have had a devastating impact on the DRC. Even after the war ended in 2003, millions of people remain displaced, with poor access to education, healthcare, and adequate nutrition. Child malnutrition is a major issue, with many children suffering from stunted growth and development. The country's wealth in natural resources has done little to improve the lives of its citizens, with much of the profits being siphoned off by corrupt officials and multinational corporations. Number 5. Niger. Niger, a country located in the Sahara region of Africa, has a GDP per capita of just $139.08, making it the fifth poorest country in the world in 2024. Over 45% of the population lives below the international poverty line. One of the main drivers of poverty in Niger is the high birth rate, with women having an average of 7.4 children each. This rapid population growth puts immense strain on the country's limited resources and infrastructure. Droughts and food shortages are common occurrences, with the 2010 drought still having lasting effects on the country's agricultural sector. Niger is also one of the hottest countries in the world, further exacerbating the challenges faced by its citizens. Number 6. Somalia. Somalia is the sixth poorest country in the world in 2024, with a GDP per capita of just $130.05. The country is heavily dependent on agriculture and livestock, but frequent droughts and the effects of climate change have made it difficult for people to sustain themselves. In some villages, over 100 people have died in just 2 days due to starvation and lack of access to food and water. Rural areas are particularly hard hit, with many people trekking long distances to the capital city of Mogadishu in search of food and aid. Reports of children dying on the side of the road due to starvation are tragically common. High food prices, limited wages, and unemployment have created a perfect storm of poverty and hunger in Somalia. Number 7. Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso, a low-income country in sub-Saharan Africa, is the seventh poorest country in the world in 2024. Around 40.1% of the population lives below the poverty line, with the majority of poor people residing in rural areas. Agriculture is the backbone of Burkina Faso's economy, but unpredictable rainfall patterns, lack of modern equipment, and food insecurity make it challenging for farmers to earn a sustainable living. Political instability has also had a significant impact on the country's economy, with periods of unrest and conflict hindering economic growth and development. Despite these challenges, there is hope that poverty rates in Burkina Faso can be reduced if the political situation stabilizes and modern agricultural practices are implemented. Number 8. Liberia. Liberia is the eighth poorest country in the world in 2024, with a GDP per capita of just $152.08. Despite being rich in natural resources like gold, rubber, diamonds, and timber, 64% of the population lives below the poverty line. The legacy of a 14-year civil war that claimed over 200,000 lives continues to haunt Liberia. The country has struggled to recover, with many citizens unable to adjust to civilian life after years of conflict. Corruption is rampant, preventing the country from fully utilizing its natural resources for the benefit of its people. Inadequate infrastructure, such as poor road conditions and the limited institutional capacity of farmer groups, have also hindered economic development. Low pay in the public sector and the lack of training have contributed to widespread corruption, further entrenching poverty and inequality in the country. Number 9. Chad. Chad is the 9th poorest country in the world in 2024, with a GDP per capita of just $115.09. The country's unstable climate, which oscillates between droughts and heavy rains, has made it difficult for the agricultural sector to thrive. Access to healthcare is severely limited, with only 345 doctors serving the entire country a few years ago, a ratio of just 0.4 doctors per 10,000 people. Illiteracy is another major issue, with only 33% of adults being literate. This lack of education is exacerbated by a shortage of human resources and inadequate infrastructure. Chad's dependence on oil has also contributed to its economic woes, with the 2014 recession leading to increased poverty and the scrapping of many public service projects. Number 10. Madagascar. Rounding out the list of the 10 poorest countries in the world in 2024 is Madagascar, with a GDP per capita of just $516. Despite being the 5th largest island in the world and a leading exporter of vanilla, over 80% of the population lives in poverty. Madagascar's geographical location makes it particularly vulnerable to cyclones and famines, which have a devastating impact on the country's agricultural sector and food security. Deforestation is another significant challenge, with only 10% of the original rainforest remaining due to slash-and-burn farming techniques. Poor infrastructure, with only 11% of roads being paved, further compounds the difficulties faced by Madagascar's citizens. Access to clean water and sanitation is also a major issue, with only half of the population having access to drinkable water and 70% lacking adequate sanitation facilities. Despite the challenges, Madagascar's stunning natural beauty and rich cultural heritage offer a glimmer of hope for the future, but significant investments in infrastructure, education, and sustainable development practices are needed to lift the country out of poverty. The reality of life in the poorest countries in the world is sobering, but their stories remind us of the resilience and determination of the human spirit. While poverty, conflict and environmental challenges continue to plague these nations, there is hope that with international cooperation, investment, and a commitment to sustainable development, we can work towards a more equitable and prosperous future for all. Remember to like this video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to our channel for more informative and thought-provoking content.